The date is June 11, 1966, Binh Duong Province, South Vietnam. A Viet Cong platoon leader named Duc is positioned in a tree line 300 meters from a rice paddy. He is watching an American patrol moving through the open ground. The patrol is a reinforced squad, approximately 15 men. They are moving slowly, searching the area. Standard sweep operation. Duc has ambushed American patrols before. The tactic is proven. Wait until the patrol is in the open, maximum distance from cover. Then open fire with automatic weapons from concealed positions. The Americans will take casualties in the first burst. They will seek cover, return fire with rifles, call for support. But support takes time. Artillery requires minutes to coordinate. Helicopter gunships require 10 to 15 minutes to arrive. By the time heavy fire arrives, Duc's platoon will have withdrawn. The American patrol enters the kill zone. Duc gives the signal. His squad opens fire. AK-47 rounds impact around the Americans. 2 soldiers fall. The rest drop to the ground. They are returning fire now. Rifle fire. M16 rounds snapping through the air above Duc's position. This is expected. The Americans are suppressed, pinned in the open. Duc's platoon has fire superiority. Then one American soldier stands. He is holding a weapon Duc has not seen before. It looks like a short rifle with an oversized barrel. The soldier raises the weapon to his shoulder, aims, fires. There is a hollow thump. The weapon's report is not loud, not like a rifle, a soft, almost comical sound. The soldier drops back to the ground. Duc watches the tree line. Nothing happens. The American missed. 5 seconds later, the world explodes. The grenade detonates 10 meters from Duc's position, not at ground level. In the air, the fragmentation tears through the foliage. 2 of his men scream. Duc feels something hit his shoulder. Blood. He looks down. Shrapnel has penetrated his shirt. A flesh wound. Painful but not serious. He looks back at the American position. The soldier with the strange weapon is loading another round. The weapon breaks open like a shotgun. The soldier inserts a fat cartridge, closes the weapon, aims again, fires. Another thump. Another explosion. This one closer, 15 meters. Duc realizes what is happening. The American has portable artillery, a single soldier carrying a weapon that fires explosive rounds. No mortar team, no setup time, no spotting rounds, just point and shoot. Duc orders his platoon to withdraw. They move back through the tree line into the jungle. The American continues firing. Explosions follow them. 5 rounds, 6, 7. The Americans are advancing now, using the explosive fire to suppress Duc's positions while they maneuver. Duc's platoon escapes. 3 dead, 4 wounded. The ambush has failed. Not because of superior American numbers, not because of artillery or air support, because one American soldier with one weapon delivered explosive firepower faster than Duc could react. That night, Duc writes his after-action report. He describes the weapon. He estimates the caliber. He notes the psychological effect. His men had been confident in their positions. Trees and distance provided cover from rifle fire. But explosive rounds changed the equation. Cover that stopped bullets did not stop shrapnel. Distance that degraded rifle accuracy did not degrade the explosive radius. The weapon, he writes, gives every American squad the capability of a mortar team. Without the crew, without the setup time, without the vulnerability of a static position. One man, one weapon, immediate fire. This is not a story about a grenade launcher. It is a forensic examination of what happens when one side deploys a weapon that fundamentally changes the tactical balance at the squad level. It is the story of how the M79 grenade launcher, a weapon weighing less than 7 pounds, gave American infantry squads organic explosive firepower that the North Vietnamese Army and Viet Cong had no equivalent for. And it is the story of why Vietnamese forces, who had developed small unit tactics based on 20 years of experience fighting enemies without portable explosive weapons, were shocked to discover that American squads could respond to contact with grenades before the Vietnamese could withdraw. To understand why the Vietnamese were shocked, you need to understand what they expected, because their expectations were based on decades of combat experience. And that experience had taught them specific lessons about how infantry fights. Part 1. The doctrine that defined expectations. Let's be precise about what infantry combat looked like in Vietnam before the M79 arrived, because the tactical patterns were not random. they were based on the weapons available and the doctrine developed to employ those weapons. Vietnamese revolutionary forces, from the Viet Minh fighting the French through the Viet Cong and North Vietnamese Army fighting the Americans, understood infantry combat as a contest between rifles and machine guns at ranges typically under 400 meters. Explosive firepower, mortars and artillery were supporting weapons employed at the platoon level or higher, not at the squad level. A Viet Cong or NVA squad carried rifles, AK-47s primarily. Some older units still used SKS carbines or captured French MAS-36s. The firepower was direct fire, point targets, soldiers shooting at soldiers, effective range 200 to 300 meters. Beyond that, accuracy degraded rapidly. The squad also carried grenades, fragmentation grenades, thrown by hand. Effective range 20 to 30 meters, maximum range if the thrower was strong and conditions were ideal, perhaps 45 meters. Grenades were close combat weapons, used when assaulting positions or defending against assault, not used at standoff ranges. If a Vietnamese squad needed explosive firepower beyond grenade range, they called for mortar support. The standard weapon was the Type 63 mortar, Chinese-made, 60mm, effective range over 1,000 meters, accurate, lethal, but it required a crew, minimum 2 men, 3 for sustained fire. The weapon weighed with base plate approximately 27 pounds. Ammunition was heavy. Each round weighed approximately 3 pounds. More importantly, the mortar required setup time. The crew had to unlimber the weapon, position the base plate, level the tube, calculate range and deflection, load and fire. From the decision to employ the mortar to the first round impacting the target, the timeline was measured in minutes, not seconds. This created a tactical gap. Vietnamese squads had rifles for direct fire out to 300 meters. They had hand grenades for close combat out to 30 meters. But between 30 meters and the minimum safe distance for mortar fire, approximately 100 meters, there was a gap where the squad had no organic explosive capability. This gap shaped Vietnamese small unit tactics. Squads maneuvered to close the distance before using grenades, or they remained at distance and relied on rifle fire until mortar support could be coordinated. The idea of a single soldier delivering explosive fire at 200 meters instantly without support was not part of the tactical framework. When the Americans arrived in 1965, Vietnamese commanders assumed American squads would have the same limitations, better rifles, more ammunition, but fundamentally the same weapons mix: rifles, grenades, crew-served weapons requiring setup time. The M79 invalidated that assumption, and Vietnamese forces discovered the invalidation the hard way, in ambushes that failed, in assaults that were repulsed, in firefights where American squads delivered explosive fire before Vietnamese squads could maneuver. Part 2. The weapon that filled the gap. Here is what the M79 grenade launcher was designed to do, because the design intent explains why the weapon had the effect it did when employed in Vietnam. The United States military in the late 1950s recognized the same tactical gap the Vietnamese had. Infantry squads needed organic explosive firepower at ranges beyond hand grenade distance but shorter than mortar minimum range. The solution was a shoulder-fired weapon that could deliver a small explosive projectile accurately at ranges up to 400 meters. The result was the M79. Development began in 1953. The weapon was adopted in 1961. Production scaled rapidly. By 1965, the weapon was being issued to infantry squads deploying to Vietnam. The specifications were simple. Single-shot, break-action weapon, 40mm bore. The weapon weighed 6 pounds unloaded. Length 29 inches. A trained soldier could carry the weapon, 100 rounds of ammunition, and still function as a rifleman. Many M79 gunners carried a .45 caliber pistol as a sidearm for personal defense. The ammunition was the critical element. The 40mm grenade weighed approximately half a pound. The round was self-contained, propellant and projectile in one package. High explosive fragmentation was standard. The grenade would detonate on impact or after a minimum arming distance of approximately 30 meters. This prevented the grenade from detonating if it hit something close to the shooter. Effective range was 350 meters against point targets, maximum range over 400 meters against area targets. The grenade could be fired in a high arc for plunging fire behind cover or in a flat trajectory for direct fire against visible targets. A skilled gunner could put a grenade through a window at 150 meters, or drop a grenade behind a berm at 300 meters. Rate of fire was limited only by the gunner's ability to load, break the weapon open, eject the spent casing, load a new round, close the weapon, aim, fire. A trained gunner could sustain 5 to 7 rounds per minute, faster in emergencies if accuracy was less critical. The psychological effect of the weapon came from 3 factors. First, the sound. The M79 made a distinctive hollow thump when fired, not a sharp crack like a rifle, a soft, almost gentle sound. Soldiers nicknamed it the thumper or the blooper because of this sound. The sound was deceptive. It did not convey danger until the grenade detonated. Second, the trajectory. The grenade traveled in a high arc. Soldiers in cover could not see it coming. The grenade would appear over the top of their position and detonate in the air or on impact. There was no warning, no incoming whistle like artillery, just the thump of the launch and then the explosion. Third, the immediacy. From contact to impact was measured in seconds, not minutes like mortar fire. An American squad taking fire could respond with grenades before the enemy could adjust position. This compressed the tactical timeline. Vietnamese forces that expected time to maneuver after initiating contact discovered they had seconds instead of minutes. Part 3. The employment that multiplied the effect. The M79 was not issued to every soldier. It was issued at the squad level, 1 per squad, sometimes 2 per platoon. The grenadier was a designated role. The soldier selected for this role was trained specifically in the weapon's employment, but the training was not just technical, it was tactical. Grenadiers were taught to think like indirect fire support. They learned to estimate range by eye, to calculate trajectory based on target distance and cover, to adjust fire based on observed impacts. They became walking mortars, organic to the squad, immediately responsive to the squad leader. In practice, this meant that every American infantry squad in Vietnam had a soldier who could deliver explosive fire at ranges where Vietnamese squads had only rifles. The tactical advantage was immediate and persistent. Example employment. American squad on patrol makes contact with Viet Cong position in tree line 200 meters away. The squad takes cover, returns fire with rifles, suppresses the Viet Cong position. The grenadier identifies the tree line, estimates range, loads high explosive round, fires. The grenade arcs toward the tree line, detonates in the foliage. Fragmentation tears through the position. The Viet Cong have 3 options: stay in position and take casualties from repeated grenade fire, withdraw and break contact, or assault the American position to close the range where grenades are less effective. All 3 options favor the Americans. Staying means casualties. Withdrawing means mission failure. Assaulting means moving through open ground under rifle and grenade fire. The employment patterns evolved throughout the war. Early grenadiers used the weapon primarily for suppression, firing grenades at suspected enemy positions to keep heads down while the squad maneuvered. Later grenadiers became more precise, using the weapon for surgical strikes, putting grenades through bunker apertures, dropping grenades behind berms where enemy soldiers were taking cover. The weapon was also employed defensively. American units setting up night defensive positions would register grenade targets around the perimeter. When enemy forces probed the perimeter at night, grenadiers could engage without waiting for mortar or artillery support. The response was immediate. The psychological effect on enemy forces attempting night infiltration was significant. They expected darkness to provide concealment. The grenade did not require visual target identification. The grenadier could fire on sound or suspected position. Helicopter insertions used grenadiers as suppressive fire. When a squad was landing in a hot LZ, the door gunner and grenadier would suppress the tree line while the squad dismounted. The grenadier could put grenades into suspected positions before the enemy could organize effective fire. The cumulative effect was that Vietnamese forces could encounter M79 fire in almost any tactical situation. Ambushes, meeting engagements, assaults, defensive positions. The weapon was ubiquitous at the squad level. And unlike crew-served weapons that could be targeted and destroyed, the M79 was carried by one man who looked like any other rifleman until he fired. Part 4. the specific engagements that defined the shock. Here is what M79 fire looked like in specific engagements. The details come from after-action reports, unit histories, and Vietnamese prisoner interrogations. The pattern is consistent. Vietnamese forces that engaged American squads at ranges where they expected rifle duels encountered explosive fire that disrupted their tactics. Example 1. September 1966. Phuoc Tuy Province. An Australian infantry platoon with attached American advisors was conducting a patrol. The platoon made contact with a Viet Cong company-sized force entrenched in a rubber plantation. The Viet Cong had prepared fighting positions, foxholes, trenches, overhead cover. They were confident in their positions. The Australian platoon took cover and returned fire. The American advisor was carrying an M79. He began engaging the Viet Cong positions methodically. High-angle fire, dropping grenades into the trenches. The Viet Cong could not effectively return fire because the grenadier was in cover 200 meters away. They could not see him to shoot at him, and the grenades were landing in their positions. After 20 rounds, the Viet Cong withdrew. They had prepared positions, they had numerical superiority, but they could not remain in positions that were being subjected to accurate grenade fire from a weapon they could not suppress. The platoon advanced, found 8 Viet Cong dead in the trenches, blood trails indicating additional wounded who had been carried away. The after-action report noted that without the M79, the engagement would have required artillery or air support to dislodge the Viet Cong. Those assets would have taken 10 to 15 minutes to arrive. The M79 delivered equivalent effect immediately. Example 2. March 1967. Mekong Delta. A Viet Cong battalion was maneuvering to attack an AR-VN outpost. American advisors with the AR-VN unit spotted the Viet Cong movement at approximately 400 meters, too far for effective rifle fire. The advisors had M79s. They began firing at maximum range. The grenades were not accurate at that distance, but they did not need to be. The explosions disrupted the Viet Cong formation, forced the soldiers to take cover, slowed the advance. By the time the Viet Cong closed to effective rifle range, American helicopter gunships had arrived. A Viet Cong prisoner captured after the engagement stated in interrogation that his unit had expected to close with the outpost before the Americans could respond with heavy fire. The grenade fire at long range had disrupted the timeline. His unit had taken casualties and lost cohesion before reaching assault distance. The attack was aborted. Example 3. July 1968. Central Highlands. A North Vietnamese Army squad ambushed an American convoy. The ambush was well planned. Command detonated mines disabled the lead vehicle. Automatic weapons fire engaged the convoy from both sides of the road. Standard ambush doctrine. Hit hard. Withdraw before the Americans could organize a response. The convoy infantry squad dismounted and returned fire. The squad's grenadier identified the NVA positions by muzzle flash. He began walking grenades along the tree line, left to right. Methodical fire. The NVA had expected rifle fire that they could suppress by remaining in cover. The grenades were detonating in their positions. They withdrew after approximately 3 minutes. The convoy sustained 2 wounded, both from the initial mine blast. No casualties from the automatic weapons fire because the NVA had been forced to withdraw before they could deliver sustained fire. The convoy commander's report credited the grenadier with preventing casualties. The immediate grenade response had disrupted the ambush before it could develop. These 3 examples represent a pattern. Vietnamese forces that encountered M79 fire described it consistently in interrogations and captured documents. The weapon delivered explosive fire faster than they could react. It forced them to choose between staying in positions that were being grenaded or withdrawing and abandoning the engagement. Neither option was tactically acceptable, but the alternative, remaining under grenade fire, was casualties. Part 5. The failed adaptations and psychological impact. Vietnamese forces attempted to adapt to the M79. The adaptations were documented in training manuals and tactical directives captured throughout the war. The adaptations reveal the psychological impact of the weapon, because the adaptations were designed around avoiding the weapon rather than countering it. First adaptation: increase distance. Engage American units from beyond 400 meters. This reduced the M79's effectiveness, but created new problems. At extended range, Vietnamese rifles were less accurate. and American forces usually had artillery or air support that could engage at any range. Increasing distance meant accepting longer engagements where American support assets could arrive. Second adaptation: close the distance rapidly. If the engagement range could be reduced to under 100 meters, the M79 became less useful because the minimum arming distance meant grenades would not detonate. This tactic required Vietnamese forces to assault through open ground to close the range. Casualties during the assault were typically higher than casualties from grenade fire. Third adaptation: target the grenadier. Identify the soldier carrying the M79 and concentrate fire on him. This worked if the grenadier could be identified, but grenadiers learned to conceal their weapons until they fired, and in a squad firefight with multiple soldiers firing, identifying one specific soldier was difficult. By the time the grenadier was identified, he had usually fired several rounds. Fourth adaptation: disperse. Spread the squad over a wider area so that a single grenade could not hit multiple soldiers. This reduced casualties per grenade but created command and control problems. Dispersed squads were harder to maneuver, communication was more difficult, and the psychological effect of being under grenade fire was not eliminated by dispersion. The most common adaptation was the fourth option noted earlier: avoid engagements with American units known to have M79 gunners. This was tactically sound but strategically problematic. Vietnamese forces that avoided contact were not accomplishing their mission. The Americans retained freedom of movement. The psychological impact of the M79 was disproportionate to its lethality. The weapon did not kill as many Vietnamese soldiers as artillery or airstrikes, but it created a specific type of fear: the fear of being hit by explosive fire from a single soldier at a range where you could not effectively return fire. Prisoners interrogated after engagements involving M79 fire described the weapon as demoralizing. The sound of the thump followed by the explosion became associated with immediate danger. Soldiers would react to the sound by seeking deeper cover even before the grenade detonated. This disrupted unit cohesion. A squad that is focused on taking cover from grenades is not focused on returning effective fire. Part 6. The verdict. The M79 grenade launcher did not win the Vietnam War. The war was lost for strategic and political reasons unrelated to small arms effectiveness. But the M79 changed the tactical balance at the squad level in ways that Vietnamese forces could not counter. For 20 years, Vietnamese revolutionary forces had developed small unit tactics based on fighting enemies with rifles, machine guns, and crew-served indirect fire weapons. Those tactics assumed that explosive firepower at the squad level was limited to hand grenades with a maximum effective range of 30 meters. Any engagement beyond grenade range was a rifle fight until heavier support could be coordinated. The M79 invalidated that assumption. American squads had organic explosive firepower out to 350 meters, immediate, responsive to the squad leader, no coordination with higher headquarters required, one man, one weapon, explosive effect. This forced Vietnamese forces to adapt their tactics. The adaptations were defensive: increase distance, avoid contact, disperse formations. None of the adaptations allowed Vietnamese squads to match American squads in firepower at medium range. The tactical initiative remained with the Americans. The industrial and doctrinal system that supported the M79 was as important as the weapon itself. The Americans had identified a capability gap, squad-level explosive fire between 30 and 400 meters, and developed a weapon to fill it. The development timeline from concept to deployment was approximately 8 years. The production was scaled to the point where every infantry squad in Vietnam had at least one grenadier. Vietnamese forces had no equivalent capability. The closest weapon was the RPG-7, but the RPG was an anti-tank weapon, not designed for anti-personnel use. Heavy, slow to reload, conspicuous. Not a squad-level weapon that could be integrated into small unit tactics the way the M79 was. This is what tactical innovation looks like when one side has the industrial base and doctrinal flexibility to identify a gap and fill it, and the other side does not. The gap existed for both sides. Both sides needed squad-level explosive fire. The Americans developed the M79. The Vietnamese adapted their tactics to avoid fighting at the ranges where the M79 was most effective. The result was that American squads controlled the tactical geometry of most small unit engagements. Vietnamese soldiers who survived engagements with M79 fire described it with a consistent theme. The weapon gave every American squad the capability that previously required a mortar team, and it delivered that capability instantly. No setup time, no coordination, just point and shoot. The tactical gap that had existed in infantry combat for decades was closed, and Vietnamese forces had no answer for it. If your father or grandfather served in Vietnam as a grenadier or encountered the M79, I want to hear about it in the comments. What did he tell you about using the weapon or facing it? The official histories record the specifications. The comments record what it felt like to carry the thumper or hear it being fired at you. Those details matter. Write them down.